And we can call the meeting to order and take a roll call, I guess.
All right, Director Waslowski.
Here.
Director Seppi.
Here.
Director Bajaj.
Here.
Director Racy.
Here.
And Director Chow is not here. Yes.
And so the public comment, if items not on the agenda, is usually where we see if the public has comment. And Eureka joined us. If you got through your manager's report, Kevin put in there that I attended the Monday meeting for choosing our newest representative on for the special districts, independent special districts. The representative for LAFCO backup, the alternate, and Eureka, who was our former alternate, took over person who represents us at the meeting. And the second person who was chosen was Helen
Chapman.
Yes, Helen Chapman. And Eureka has quite a background as including ex-mayor of City of Palo Alto. She is on the Mid-Peninsula Open Space District, has done many different things, a lot of years of experience on public boards, and a lot doing with open space issues. The same is true of Helen. She works on open space issues in her job for the city of San Jose. So they were both good choices. The meeting went, when it came to picking an alternate, we also had an equally qualified person from El Camino Hospital District. So it was tough when you have to choose. So, but that's the summary of an hour and a half meeting. And Eureka wanted to come by and say hi to you all. And Eureka, are you still here?
I am. Yes. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Great. Okay. Yes, my name is Yoriko Kishimoto. And yes, I just wanted to come and say hello to everybody on the board. And of course, congratulations to all the newly elected board members as well, or newly elected or appointed, I'm not sure, but so that's great. So, yes, thank you, Steve, for supporting my candidacy as well. So, and I'm sure you know that Steve always does a great job chairing the Special Districts Association. So he's been doing that for many years. And I've been the LAFCO alternate, as he said, for 7 years. And you heard my background briefly. It's I've been in public office for 20 years, actually. So maybe 20 years, maybe 18 years. Anyways, 8 years Palo Alto City Council, including as mayor. And so where we also operated swimming pools and of course had a very active recreation department. So I'm somewhat familiar with recreational services, as well as, the LAFCO oversees 17 independent special districts, and they include like wastewater and water and memorial districts, cemetery districts. It's a very diverse group, including open space, and a big one is the Valley Water. So and I understand, yeah, you're going to be talking about the LAFCO report later tonight. I may or may not stay for that, but yeah, I'm glad to be liaison to you and answer any questions about LAFCO, and vice versa, so I will help represent the voice of LAFCO, of special districts on LAFCO. But although, as you know, when I serve as a LAFCO director, I have to serve with the LAFCO mission in mind first and foremost. But of course, it helps to have somebody who understands the needs of special districts. So, if you have any questions for me, I'm definitely glad to answer them. Otherwise, I will thank you for letting me drop in on your meeting, and maybe I'll listen in for a little while and then disappear at some point.
Thank you, Rico. Does anyone have any questions? Kevin said my sound was cutting out, so I may have to switch sound thing. But anyway, what Eureka said is when they take the oath to be on LAFCO, they have to basically represent everybody in the county, no longer who they nominally represent. And so that's a really good oath. It's like, you know, I wish ours was so strong. But you know,
your voice is definitely cutting in and out, Steve.
I gotta figure out how to use a phone. I dialed in. Yeah. So does this work?
You'll have to mute either the phone or the laptop there.
Yeah, a little bit of feedback there. Huh?
Yeah.
I turned off the phone. Make sure that works. So, am I getting through now?
Yeah, it's sounding a little better. Yes.
A little bit better, yeah.
But well, I don't want to take a lot of your time. I know you have a lot of things to get through, but well, thank you. It's good to see everybody's face and meet you, and just consider myself available if you want to ever contact me.
Thank you.
All right. Does Jenny have she needs to bring it on the agenda? Nope. All right. Then consent calendar. I move to approve the consent calendar. And it's 3, 4. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yes. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay. I mean, do you know who that was? All right, is there any discussion or comment on that? I already commented on the general manager's report by talking about Eureka. That was my only comment. Everything else looks okay. Is there any set aside for looking at more detail? I hear no one. Okay. So I'm going to roll call on the consent calendar. Kevin? I think we're roll calling.
All right. Sure. Director Racy?
In favor.
Director Bajaj?
In favor.
Director Sethi?
In favor.
Director Wasowski?
In favor. Right. So the next item is item 5, second reading of the new board policy for recreation. Kevin and I discussed this a little bit this afternoon, and I think officially we need to read it. That would be a waste of everybody's time. But I have to present it and have it as part of our policy. Do we need to vote on this or not, Kevin?
Yeah, if the board wants to pass it, someone will need to make a motion. To just give a quick reminder on this one, this is the recreation space usage where it kind of lays out what the space is used for. If someone does pass it, then nothing will really change at first because the board hasn't made a pricing schedule for the nonprofit groups, or the community events. So it wouldn't do anything unless the board makes a price schedule, a fee schedule.
All right. what I was proposing to do is move to the board policy 3015 with the fee schedule that was discussed last meeting of $25 an hour. And that way we'll have at least a policy and a fee schedule. It's a moot point for several months until COVID-19 allows us to actually have meetings again. But at least it's a start. And if we find anything wrong with either having the policy and all, we can change that before it actually gets used. So that's my motion. Anyone second?
I'll second.
So does we can discuss it if anyone wants to, but it's such a minor. Of course, you guys go ahead. Give me more time.
Steve, can I just clarify the motion? That was to also include a fee schedule in there?
$25 an hour fee schedule.
Is that for nonprofit or everyone?
Community events. Community events.
If it turns out to be something we don't want to charge a fee, we can always do that on a basis. But at least we have a fixed fee to start with, and the board decides to an event that's in community importance that we don't want to charge the fee. We can do that on an exception basis. But at least we have a fee schedule. And Kevin pointed out a few minutes ago, that's the one thing that was missing was a fee schedule. Right, Kevin? Do I have that pretty clear?
I'm having a really tough time hearing you.
On this level or clarity?
It kind of like the volume just kind of dips out over time. So I hear the first few words and then you're just gone.
Yeah, I think there's also just a lot of disturbance. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, let's see. Everybody else has if everybody else is on mute, it helps. I know it's not on mute and Kevin's not. We can try it. I think I know what's happening is I need to speak up and I can't let my voice drop. So it means that if this continues, I'll let Kevin mainly run the meeting and do what I have to do when I have to do it. But so anyway, Kevin, is there, if we pass a fee schedule of $25 an hour and we pass the policy, then we can act on it when we reopen or change it in the next few months is what I was trying to say. Because passing it now is kind of a moot point because we can't have any meetings right now anyway for public events. Correct?
Yes, that sounds about right. So for now, passing it will mean nothing because there are no rentals for the most part, except for scuba, and they have their own air tanks. There's not really transmission risk there. But at some point, yes, then people could have community events.
Okay. So did someone second that? I can't remember.
Yeah, I did.
Yes.
So any other questions? No? Then I'll call the roll.
All right, Director Sethi.
For it.
Okay, Director Bajaj.
In favor.
Director Racy.
Aye.
And Director Waslowski.
Aye. All right. The other item number 6, first reading of policy amendment to 420. I'll pass that off to Kevin. Anything to say? You can hear me better. Go ahead.
Perfect. So I'm going to scroll down so we can kind of see this this particular policy here. It'll take me a little bit to get down here. Okay, so in December, in the first meeting that we had, we did the officer rotation. And as we were going through it, I realized that the policy was not super clear, that it's the intention that the vice chair rotates to the chair and then a new vice chair is selected. And so what this officer rotation policy is really about is about clarifying that policy so it's a little bit clearer, trying to make it into a better policy. So this was always the intention. It just was more confusing than I was hoping it would be. So I rewrote it a little bit so that it's very clear that the current vice chair can rotate to the chair position. People can yield their position at any time to a different, to the next person in line. And then once the chair is selected, then the vice chair is selected as the next eligible person. And then that way, rotations are a lot smoother. You can kind of tell who it's going to be ahead of time. You can start preparing, training for that transition, that kind of thing. Is there any questions on that policy?
I have a quick question. So for the vice chair, is it that whoever has served the longest on the board gets elected to vice chair, or is it what we did last time where someone can be nominated and then everyone votes?
That's an excellent question. So what happened last time was very unusual because everyone had served the exact same amount of time. And so in that case, what happened was that you said, hey, I'm interested, and everyone else yielded. Normally, it would be the longest serving so that you have a clear rotation schedule. And I think right down here is what happens. If no director meets the criteria outlined above, meaning the longest serving, then the next, then you have a whole bunch of things, including dice rolling if it gets, or coin flipping if it gets to that. So just so that we're absolutely certain there's no possible way that we can end up with a deadlock and no officer. So that's the intention here.
Basically, what I like these changes, Kevin, because what Kevin's done, I've been on a board for 28 years, so I've been chair at least 4 times, rotating through 5 people each, at a time. And so he's basically added the fact that, yeah, the current vice chair normally rotates to the chair position. And because we normally had a vice chair, but we didn't this time. It was unusual. Everybody had the same length of service. So anyway, I think I'm glad you made these changes because it clarified it quite a bit. But basically what's here is what we've been doing for 50 years, pretty much. And that way, every board member gets to serve as chair in rotation. And next person to be chair is generally, if people serve terms of, let's say, 8 or 12 years generally, which is generally the case, they're that long serving, they end up, the person who has not been chair the longest is the next vice chair, then they become the chair. And the good part about that is, as he says, it helps make it clear who's going to be up when. But we've always had people who decided to yield their position to somebody else because they didn't feel comfortable being chairman the next year. So, but it pretty much followed this, but we finally got it down in writing. It was just always never in writing before. So I moved to approve it with these changes that Kevin made, because this is great. This will, we won't deadlock on who's supposed to be chair, or the future board won't.
Oh, this is a first reading, so we don't need to vote.
Anyway, so, but yeah, if you look at it, if you see any problems between now and next meeting, let us know, but I don't think you're going to find any. Those are very good changes, believe me. All right, next one. Any other questions? I don't want to rush. Okay. Then we'll skip number 7 for now, because I think we'll need a lot of time with that. I move to approve the 2021 part-time employee compensation schedule, although I guess first we should hear about it from Kevin. Go ahead.
All right, I will go to the slide itself. Okay. Sorry, I've actually got a lot of windows up, so it's got to dodge around. Oh, Director Chow is here.
We're on item 8, Director Chow. We're skipping item 7 until the end. that you're up to speed on.
Hi guys, sorry I'm late.
No worries. Hello. Okay, perfect. I'm just recording the times and everything so
Awesome.
that we have it in the minutes. Okay. All right, perfect. Okay, so we are on. Sorry, got to scroll up here. There we go. Okay, so we're talking about the 2021 part-time compensation schedule. Essentially what's happened is that the minimum wage has increased in Cupertino from $15.35 up to $15.65. The Rancho minimum wage is $15.50 currently, and so just to stay ahead of the minimum wage a little bit, we'd like to go up to $16 an hour. The way that the wages work is that everything is based off of that minimum wage. So it makes it a lot easier because when you move that up, then all of the rest of them move up. So for example, the base pay, if it's $15.50 now, it would go to $16 effective January 1st. And then any of the supervisors and most other staff would get base pay +2. The managers get base pay +4, which would be going from $19.50 to $20. And of course, our maintenance staff would go from $25.50 to $26. That's really the only change from 2020 to 2021 that's being proposed. But just so that everyone's kind of aware of this and has a chance to see the other forms of incentive compensation. There is a modification to the base rate of $1 per hour after teaching 140 teaching hours. This is basically meant to incentivize new staff to A, stick around for another year at least, and B, is also to incentivize teaching swim lessons, which is physically demanding. Part B is a $2 an hour incentive pay for winter lap swim guards, which is November. Yes, sorry?
Kevin, quick,
Yes.
so for typically, how many hours do you get per season per coach?
You know, it really depends. We have some people.
140?
What's that?
I said 140 is per year-ish?
No, it depends, right? So the summer season is 2.5 months long. And so for summer only staff, 140 is typically, most staff will almost make it to 140 their first year. If you push really hard, you can make it in a single summer. So it really depends how much someone works. So, it's an incentive either way. Either you're going to want to work a lot of hours in one summer, or you work less hours over 2 summers. But that's for summer only staff. For year-round staff, they'll make it up very quickly. They'll do it in 1 year, easy. Does that answer the question? Okay, perfect. Is there any other questions on that? Okay. So 2B is a $2 incentive pay for winter lap swim guards in the middle of winter for an outdoor pool, and it gets very cold, and 6:30 in the morning, it's pretty rough out there. And what we have noticed is that before we instituted this particular incentive, we had trouble keeping lap swim guards over the winter. So what would happen is we would get a lap swim guard, we train them up, we get them ready for that, and then they would drop out in the fall. And so we would have these service interruptions all the time. And once we instituted this incentive pay, it basically stopped. So that's something that I think is pretty important. It affects really only 2 people and only for a few hours a day. The additional one-time bonus of up to $2 per hour performance bonus at the end of summer, again, because everyone's at the same rate, right? So if you're a lifeguard, you're making the same rate as everyone else, whether you've worked 2 years or whether you work 10 years. And this, if you're a great guard or if you're an okay guard, there's really no difference. And so to kind of make up for that, what we have is a performance bonus, which takes into account the number of hours worked as well as the performance. So I have some metrics actually for that one. For most employees, the total bonus was $130. So it's not an enormous amount. And it ended up being about 84 cents an hour on average and the total cost was about $5,709. Either way, this particular one is important just to help to give an incentive for people to work longer or to be better. And of course, it's tied in with the personnel evaluation. So you know kind of what's coming down the pipes, and you're given helpful instructions. Like if you're not doing well, then we can say, okay, here's what you need to do in order to get to a better bonus level. Or, if you're doing well, we'll tell you about that as well. So, staff isn't taken by surprise by this bonus. It's, very well laid out. Okay, so these are not being changed. These are just, we're asking to reapprove them. And this one is the only thing that's being changed, 50 cents to the base pay for part-time employees. Steve, you might be on mute.
Sorry. Does somebody else want to make a motion to approve this?
I'll make a motion.
And I'll second the motion. Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? All right. Then let's do a roll call vote. This is basically codifying, and as Kevin I think did a good job of explaining the fact that although it seems complicated, it encourages people to stay with us for several years. And so the training and the time they've spent learning how to work at Rancho, every place is different. It pays off because they come back for many years if they can, unless they leave the area. So it's worked, and the other question nobody asked is, these are comparable to every other place in the valley when we're open and we don't have COVID-19. We've kept our rates comparable to all the other area pools. This is about what they're all paying. All right, do a roll call.
All right, Director Chow.
Present.
Oh, are you voting present or voting yes or no?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said new roll call. Vote aye.
Director Wasowski?
Aye.
All right, Director Racy?
Aye.
Director Sethi?
Approve.
Director Bajaj?
Aye.
Okay.
Next item is item 9, annual policy review. Go ahead, Kevin. Your mic's working better than mine.
Okay. So these again are, we go through all the policy just to try to catch anything before it becomes an issue. This is also a great time to really get to know the board policy handbook, so that way everyone can kind of know what the rules are. The introduction is not here. Okay, hold on. Here we go. The introduction is mostly just history, so it's not very controversial. A lot of it's kind of legalese, what we're allowed to do, hire employees, things like that. But the real meat would start with policy 1000. And this one is really the one that governs how our policies come to be. If you want a new policy, how that happens, and it allows and ensures that everyone has enough time to see the policy. 72 hours before the meeting, you see the entire policy, and of course, you see it twice. So the intention here is just to have everyone at least see it, and that's it. If you have any issues, then come talk to me, and we can, we can propose some amendments, kind of in the same way that we did with the rotation policy, and bring it back to the next meeting. The basis for authority is mostly about just how the board operates as one unit, and each individual member can't go out and make changes, for example. It has to be as a whole. And the general manager's role kind of loosely spells out what the GM does and some of the powers that are granted. So yeah, if you find anything, if you're thinking that anything can be clarified or should be changed, then you're free to either reach out to me or you can make your own amendments and submit them to me a week ahead of the next meeting.
Yeah, everything that you didn't say explicitly yet, but I think you did probably did in the training. So, during the course of the year, we'll go through all the board policies, a few at a time, so that they're all they get reviewed at least annually that way, and that's the intent there. You don't have to act on them; they've already been they're in force now. But by reviewing a few of them at a time, we can find anything that needs changing. Rather than try and do them all at once, which is a bear, believe me. There's a lot of policies. So, all right. As he says, if you have any changes, let him know. So we'll back up, and we can talk about them next month. So we'll back up to the approve the board position on LAFCO. And Kevin has done an extensive amount of work putting together about 90 pages. So I'm going to let him take point on this. We did discuss it a little this afternoon, and we don't have to decide anything tonight per se. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk to Mr. Roush, our consultant, for my interview, and the rest of you, I understand, will be interviewing with him too to give him your inputs. It's basically now we can. I'll let Kevin take it from here. He's got it well organized, and I just leave something out. Besides, his audio is cutting up a little on me, but not as bad as mine seems to be for everybody else. So go ahead, Kevin.
All right, thank you. Okay, so this is the LAFCO issue is kind of it's a big deal. Earlier, the woman who dropped in, Yoriko Kishimoto, is actually a LAFCO commissioner. She's a representative from a special district, and Steve, who was on the selection committee, was one of the ones who supported her nomination to the local area formation commission. So this topic is really about how the local area formation commission would like the district to merge into the city. And so this is a big decision where all of the directors need to decide what's in the best interest of residents. Is it in the best interest of residents to exist as a separate entity or to be folded into the city? And so what I've done is I put together a summary of what has happened so far. And the first thing that happened was that in 2013, the LAFCO, which governs all the boundaries between local government agencies, came up with a report. And it looked at a couple different options and essentially established that the district shouldn't exist at some point because we are a rec district which exists in a city with a rec department. And so they recommended a follow-up study. The follow-up study, the special study of 2019-2020, it took a look at the status quo option, option 1, a merger, option 2, and becoming a subsidiary district, option 3. For all intents and purposes, 2 and 3 are basically the same. The board gets dissolved and the district gets moved in and controlled by the city. There's some minor technical differences, but ultimately it's almost the same thing. So one thing to, here, I've lost control. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties here. I apologize. It's not.
While you're doing that, every 5 years, and county gets reviewed, and as Kevin said, our district was absorbed by the annexation of Rancho Rinconada homeowners into Cupertino. We came to have the same footprint as the city's Parks and Recs department. When they made this same recommendation back in 2008, I responded to it saying that as a board member, I would support merger into the city if I felt confident that the city can provide the same or even better services at about the same cost. At that time, things were different. That was 12 years ago. Things changed a lot. And this last review, I said the same thing: is that if the city of Cupertino takes over Rancho's Rancho rented out a district, land and the pool and everything, and they can provide the same services at lower costs, then that I said honestly, as an elected official, that it would I'd have to support that, because it's better for everybody, But my family moved to Cupertino in 1964 near De Anza College, and I moved to Rancho in 1976. And in all those years, the city of Cupertino has never had a year-round aquatic schedule. So but since Kevin's come on as our general manager, and a couple of years before then, Rancho is able to do that, and so we have a track record, and they don't. But I don't want to influence the other four of you. I'm in the long run, I want to hear what you think we should do, because I'm only one vote of 5, and I have obviously a strong viewpoint. But if it's better for our public going forward to pick option 2 instead of leaving things the way they are, whatever that means, then I'm for it too, because we're here to serve the public, and we have a limited resource. And but there's the thing is, I don't think that some of the things they think would happen by being absorbed by the city can actually take place. I don't think it'll result in any higher utilization. Now that I've said that, we have to back up for the fact that we're in this COVID-19 craziness, and we're able to offer lap swim, and very few places have, because we're so well run, thanks to Kevin and all of our employees and the board, enabling them to keep going. So I think we're proving ourselves to be always being a valuable resource. But like I say, I don't want to dominate this, because I'm only one of 5 of us. But I wanted to bring up the fact that this review happened twice, and both times I argued that if the city could do a better job, I'd be the first one to go ahead, and maybe they can. I'm keeping an open mind. All right, now I'll let Kevin go back, because you can probably understand him better.
All right, thank you, Steve. So let's go back to the different options. Option 1 to stay the same under district management, under board management, and option 2, which would be under the control of the city. From a governance perspective, option 1, obviously the directors keep making policy, choosing a general manager who runs the district and creates the programs, etc. Option 2, the city staff would operate it, and so that would mean that this facility would really be like any other facility in the city. The recreation programs and facilities, again, status quo, everything would be kind of as they are now. And of course, if it went to the city, they wouldn't change anything at first, mostly because they'd be getting a handle on the facility, the staffing, the demand, that kind of thing, before maybe potentially making some changes. In terms of the costs and revenues, it turns out that there's really not any significant difference between the two. The net revenue ends up being roughly the same. There's some inconsequential differences. The rates and fees for programming would, if the district was merged, would not change, but it's a little bit questionable, only because the uniform rate for all city residents is actually higher for, so for example, Blackberry Farm, swimming there is something like $8 or $10, whereas Rancho it's like $5 or $6, depending on if you're resident or non-resident. So there is a difference. So even though it says there's no rate changes, it kind of sounds like the prices would go up. And of course, the capital costs would be about the same. So in any case, that particular table was from the special study, which was presented to the city council, and the city council kind of pushed it to the Parks and Rec Commission to give a recommendation. The Parks and Rec Commission met, and they said that they recommend merging Rancho into the Parks and Rec department. Now, it's important to understand that the rationale for this was that the city master plan calls for more aquatics and for year-round aquatics, and it also calls for more parks in the east of Cupertino. On paper, taking Rancho satisfies all of these needs. However, the previous board disagreed with this assessment, mostly because, well, there's some reasons which we'll get into. But one of the big challenges here is that the public really wasn't consulted adequately. The Parks and Rec did a survey that even their own commissioners, 2 of them, described it as inadequate. So they didn't really reach out and find out whether district residents even wanted this, or whether Cupertino residents wanted this. And of course, the facility is in probably the worst location possible. Some of the challenges, again, is that most of the users are from San Jose, because Lawrence and Bollinger on the other sides, that's San Jose. 75% of the area around the district is San Jose. There's parking issues for even we have to deal with it, but for the city of Cupertino, it would be even worse because you're drawing people from the rest of Cupertino. So those are some of the challenges. And in any case, what I've tried to do is give you, this part is my opinion of merging or not merging. And from a governance perspective, I think that Rancho residents don't really have a whole lot to gain from merging with the city of Cupertino. And the reason for this is that currently Rancho residents can run for the board and have a direct influence on what happens at Rancho. San Jose residents, while they don't have representation, they can come to meetings, and the district board is so much more receptive to suggestions than the city council or the Parks and Recreation Commission would be. In addition, when you're talking about governance, this board really is all about this facility, whereas the commission is really citywide, and so that the things that the city focuses on, it might not be in this neighborhood. It might not be on Rancho. It may be somewhere else. Right? So here, it's absolutely sure that this board will take care of this facility, this district, and these residents. And so there's that. And of course, future funding priorities may change. And so that, instead of Rancho being the priority, maybe it's somewhere else. And the only pro really is that it eliminates duplicate governance support, which doesn't have any visible financial benefit. So there's really, the Rancho residents would be giving up a whole lot without gaining anything really. Now, from a management and operations standpoint, it's kind of the opposite. From this standpoint, there's probably some slight advantages merging with the city of Cupertino. The city of Cupertino has they have departments that have specialized staffing in them. They've got public works, they have their IT department, they've got their HR department, accounting department. So they have really good tools. They also have lots of existing policy, which has been tested over time. And they have enterprise software, which is very helpful. And so a lot of these things would ultimately help in the management of the facility. Now, that being said, when you start using departments, now you also have increased bureaucracy, you also have increased costs because the city is going to be maintaining the facility at a higher level. So those aren't exactly cons, like it's increased expense, you're also getting a higher, a better maintained facility, but it also costs more. The issue with this is that most users aren't going to notice better management or operation. You're not going to notice whether your software is better as a user coming to swim. You won't notice it. You may not notice the better maintenance. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. So this area is again, not something that residents are likely to be super concerned about. Same with governance. Some people are, but most people are not. Most people just want to come swim, which brings us to our third area. the rec programs are probably the #1 thing that people care about. They want to know, can I attend the programs that I like at a cost that I can afford? And that's it. And other than that, this is the big thing for residents. So on the pro side, some marketing might increase off-season programming that we don't currently have. So right now, if we wanted to start, just say like a painting class, we may not be able to draw enough people to start that type of thing. But if you have Cupertino's marketing where it's citywide, maybe you could, maybe. So it's kind of a possibility. Possible slight expansion in off-season programming as a result. The downside is that, residents have less influence on what programs they want. All right, so right now, a resident could come, they can have direct access to me, or they could talk to one of you, or they could even run for the board if they really wanted a program. Another con is that the fees are likely to increase because going to the uniform rate code means that the prices will align with the rest of the cities, which tends to be higher. And of course, there's no guarantee that the city will continue the current programs or even continue the facility as a pool. Because we're so close to San Jose, we mostly serve San Jose, and pools cost money, they don't make money. The city could decide 3 to 5 or maybe 10 years from now that they don't want to run a pool. And so they could close the pool down, for example, and then turn it into just a regular park with a playground and take all of the tax benefits that are currently coming to the district and then redirecting it somewhere else into the community. And that would be a huge loss for residents. So this one, there's the possibility potentially of in the future having slight benefits, and there's also the possibility of having enormous loss. And unfortunately, this is the one that we're least sure about, is the programs and recreation. From the costs and charges, it looks like it's kind of a wash for the most part. Revenues and expenses will be roughly the same overall. So that's not really a big thing. And let me see here. Okay, so the options are to support staying as is, to say that the board is in some, better for the residents. And the second option is to say, actually, no, I think that the city is going to be better at doing this. And this is something that each board member will probably have to weigh the difference with these ones and really think about it quite a bit and maybe discuss it a little bit. We do have some recommendations in terms of moving forward, what to do either way. The first is that having the ability for staff to continue looking at the different options is a must. Again, this is not it's not fast or free to look into this. The second is to develop a communication plan for residents, and this is the most important, especially if the board decides that option 1, the status quo, is the way to go. Then that's really going to be dependent on a really robust communication strategy with residents, getting residents really engaged and involved in this process. The third thing is to, again, identify what position the board wants to take, and that's the position that staff will advocate for. So if the board says we want to do option 1, I will work on option 1. If the board wants to do option 2, then I'll start initiating option 2. And again, this doesn't need to be tonight. Right now, I've identified the first workshop with the strategic planning consultant as when this would be a good time to kind of come together and figure out what that platform is going to be. Then formally approve that position at a board meeting. And finally, potentially think about a couple different positions or conditions in the case of a merger. So if a merge was to happen, what are some of the outcomes that would be either nice to have or must-haves? So I've put a couple down just for thought. One is to maybe have a permanent seat on the Parks and Recreation Commission for 10 years. Another might be that the facility must operate as a pool for 10 years. And the third one would be that any assets accumulated under the board should remain with the district, not go into the general fund. Or if they do go in the general fund, be earmarked for the district. The sixth one is to try to seek a 1-year delay so that we can have time to really communicate with the public about this particular change. And of course, if the board decides that option 1, staying as is without being merged into the city, is the best way to go, if the board decides that, then we should immediately start looking into finding a consultant to help us with that process. Someone who's worked with LAFCOs before, somewhere in California, but also potentially one who's familiar with the local Santa Clara LAFCO. All right. Is there any questions about this report? I know it's kind of a lot.
Is the city of Cupertino aware of these the proposals, such as the seat for the next 10 years and the asking that it be a pool for the next 10 years?
No, those were just suggestions, just starting points, ideas to get the board started on. Okay, if we wanted to go ahead with option 2, what are some of the things that would maybe make that a little bit more of an equitable trade for residents?
And then, sorry, just to follow up. So these are things that we would bring up should we decide to follow through with option 2, not something we would bring up before.
Right, absolutely.
I think my position I made clear, I hope. I'll answer any questions on it, but I'm only one of 5 of us, and I have no idea how the other 4 of you feel individually. And so I think Kevin can correct me if I got this wrong. One of the reasons I wanted to give us a lot of time tonight was to answer questions and also find out which way you guys are leaning. We don't have to adopt a policy tonight, thank God, because I think that would take a while. Because but again, I'm keeping an open mind. And one of the things I said to Kevin today is I said I wish we could say, can't we just put this off for another year until COVID gets down and it's easier to do? But the answer is no. We've hired a consultant to go ahead with this plan, and it's a good thing. I'm going to be interviewed tomorrow. The other 4 board members are going to be
public talk on this now.
put on it, and so and that's very necessary too. So, but yeah, excuse me, Jenny, I forgot. Kevin told me you raised your hand at 7:12, so I guess I should.
Yes.
Go ahead. I'll stop talking.
Okay, thank you. Hi, this is Jennifer from Griffin. I've lived in Rancho since I was adjacent to it from 85 on. I've been an owner in here since 95. I have been I've been going to the city meetings, everything that has been involved with this. I've been to the LAFCO meetings. I'm very much satisfied with the way that the Rancho Recreation District operates. I grew up in a LAFCO, I grew up in a county pocket, so I'm very, very familiar with LAFCO versus being in a city. And one of the things that is not being told to the public is that the assets of the district are about $1 million. And that would go straight into the city coffers, into the general fund, and it would disappear. And that means that the people in Rancho Rinconada district, the homeowners or renters, etc., would lose out on that money. I've already told the city that if Park and Rec takes the district, that I want Rancho Rinconada property to become a parkland. That means the pool is filled in, the cabana is taken down, and it becomes parkland for the east side of Cupertino. We have no parkland. We have nothing except a ½ acre. And the Lawrence Mitty property was purchased with Apple money recently. But we are deficit in parkland. I'm also very upset with the way the city has been running the pool at the other end of the city in Monte Vista, Blackberry Farm. That pool should be kept open 12 months a year. They want to try to take the pool at Rancho Rec as a supplement to solve that problem with the city. And that is not going to work. There's inadequate parking. It also, as Steve said, the pool has been operated by an elected district board since the 50s. It's an entity. It runs very, very well. It's always been run and managed very, very well. And I'm not convinced that the city, I think the city and the Park and Rec department are trying to take it from the residents. There has been very little outreach to the residents. That they had some sort of a survey the city did about a year ago. It was a farce. And also there were people, Rancho residents were not the only people allowed in. There were people coming in from other cities. One household had 10 responses. So I'm sorry, my husband has a master's degree in statistics, and he said that the survey was set up wrong. So if the city wants to take the district, they're going to have to meet with the public, the homeowners, people who live in Rancho, and discuss the option with them. I was actually part of one of the original group that sought to annex Rancho into Cupertino in 2000. I went to 5 years of county meetings, and I have been going to Cupertino City Council meetings consistently since 2003. So I have seen it all. And to me, this is a land grab by Cupertino. We need to be cognizant of what an asset a special district is. Yes, it's unique, it is different, but cabana clubs, recreation clubs were quite common in the way that neighborhoods were set up from 1950. The neighborhood I grew up in has a cabana club. It's still there, but anybody can belong to it. So this is just something that is unique to this neighborhood. My husband he grew up in Monte Vista. It was West San Jose then. He learned to swim at Rancho Pool. So I'm very, very concerned that sort of like the wool is being pulled over on the residents of Rancho. And I am really scared that we're going to lose a valuable asset and not be compensated for it. I know I'm using up my time, but no one also too, there's a lot of strange things. We pay special taxes on this property, and I want to make sure that we're compensated if the city seizes it. And there is a strong feeling that the city is seizing the property, but that $1 million of asset cannot go and disappear in the general fund. So I'm very happy with the way things are running. I'm very pleased that we have a board of concerned directors, and Steve and Kevin, and we're willing to fight to keep the property. I was here the entire time. I spent my summer making sure that this district was still here when others who are not here would have just let it go. But I'm looking at our board to make a responsible decision and make sure that this recreation center continues on. I have a lifetime commitment. My great aunt was an original owner. I used to come here as a child, and I really want the pool system to still be here. It provides an asset for our neighborhood, for our surrounding neighborhoods, and for many, many children that have learned to swim here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenny. Kevin, the other thing that she has pointed out, one thing I would like to correct is that the money that's diverted from our property taxes that goes to Rancho would still be collected whether the district exists or not. It's just that by law, when they created the district, they said X% of your property taxes that we're going to collect anyway will go to supporting this place. And and in the years between that time when houses were selling for about $7,000 a piece, and today when they're up above 2 million in many cases, that's grown obviously some. But so you whether Rancho exists as a district or not, we'll continue to pay exactly the same taxes. But as Jenny has pointed out, the money won't necessarily go to the park that happens to be nearest to us in the district. So what happens to that money? Maybe it ends up in general fund. That's part of what LAFCO figures out when they oversee a dissolution of a special district, if indeed they do. And it's rare. Our district has never dissolved it. Our LAFCO has never dissolved the district, and there aren't many cases in which that happens. So I agree with Jenny. I get a lot of benefit from the fact that we're approachable. I hope I'm approachable too, as a board member. People can come to us and say, "Hey, I've got some input," and it's a lot less bureaucratic than the city has become since I moved to Cupertino in '64. So, but everything's become more bureaucratic. There are just more laws you have to get along with. So anyway, I'll give it back to Kevin. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I did forget to mention some things. What happens next? So what will happen is that the city staff is going to be working on what's called a program. I forget the exact name. Anyway, they're going to be working on a plan for the takeover and the LAFCO application, and they expect to be done by July of this year. What happens then is they're going to present that application and that plan to LAFCO. So they'll go to a separate public meeting at the county. They'll present their plan. There's after that, then there'll be some deliberations, some legal processes, and they expect that this whole process could be done as early as the end of this year. That's if nothing changes. So that's their plan. I don't know how that works in real life, and I don't know how that is going to interact with what this board does or doesn't do. So I wanted to give a good summary, and I'm open to any questions about this.
I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So is there another survey planned at all to get feedback from the residents?
I don't think so. Not from the city. I think that we will be doing a survey as part of the strategic plan.
Okay. And then, so from what I heard, 75% of the users for the pool are San Jose residents, not Rancho residents, right? So we're talking about a 25% usage from the actual district residents here.
I'm sorry, I spoke too soon. I don't know the exact percentage. A majority are from San Jose.
Yeah.
And a minority are from Rancho Rinconada. Something that's kind of important to know is just kind of a lot of it just has to do with the fact that Rancho is really small. There's really no way around it. I know this is kind of sideways, but we're right here. And if you look, San Jose is really all across our border. And Rancho Rinconada is a very small area. So in fact, I may be wrong on this one, but there's actually a substantial number of Cupertino users. But of that, Rancho's even then still a small portion. I think it's somewhere around 20%, just rule of thumb. It's around 20%, higher for some programs, lower for others. We do have numbers in one of the reports, but I don't have them handy at this exact moment. But yeah, the reason why there's so many San Jose users is because we're right next to it. We're closer to San Jose than we are the rest of Cupertino.
And there are many more people in Santa Clara Valley. You've got to remember, this has been the only public pool on the west side of the Santa Clara Valley for many years, until they built like De Anza College. And so Kevin and I have met people who, like Jenny said, they learned to swim here 50 years ago because it was the only game in town. Blackford High School, which no longer exists, they had all their swimming classes here. That's like 3 miles to the east of us. And so this was the only pool they had access to, because there was a time when, other than this pool, you had to either have your own pool or belonged to a cabana club, that if you were lucky enough to live in a neighborhood that had one, or you joined one as a member of a club. So a lot of people know about us. We have a rich history, you know, and anyway, so 75%, that number varies over time. Right now it's true, but any given summer it could be 50-50. You know, it's hard to say because we don't ask everybody, where do you live? You know, for everything we provide. Anyway, that's just a clarification. I hope that helps.
Yeah, this has all been very helpful. I appreciate, of course, the comments from both you know, Steve and pretty much Kevin and everyone else. But I think so where I am at right now personally is I definitely understand the reason for keeping the special district, and I'm personally also in favor of it. You know, as keeping it as a special district. And even though I think there's a lot of these, you know, benefits that we get right now that we can continue if we negotiate the terms properly with Cupertino Parks and Rec, I just don't see a lot of the benefits continuing for longer than like 10 years or some other time that we can sort of arbitrarily negotiate. But I do think that in general, the best step personally for me would be to get more of a public input and really organize some sort of survey that everyone, you know, can respond to within Rancho Rinconada and also outside, right? I think a big part of this is the fact that, as has been mentioned, that 75% of the people who come to the pool are from San Jose. I think that's a large part of it because, you know, again, like everyone said, if we integrate it as part of Parks and Rec, they have no incentive really to serve people from San Jose. So I think that would be the next best option personally.
Absolutely. I think that's a very valid point. I think we do need another survey of the residents to get more feedback than the 25% usage we see.
And that's part of our what is it? Major plan is serving the residents too after they. It's a good idea because Jenny's right. It was a very huge survey, and most people didn't know it was there or its importance. It was under advertised. So, because again, I get back to the fact that if a majority of people want to go one way or the other, and as their elected representative, I have to side with that if it's a clear majority. But I agree with Nakul. I have personal reasons why I like it the way it is, even though, you know, because I've had input. I joined the board because I used the pool for my bad back, and I just wanted to make sure it was a safe pool. And so that's how I got on the board originally. And 28 years later, I'm still here. You know, but I'm glad to have the four of you join me because you're bringing fresh ideas. And anyway, I'm babbling. Somebody else has something to say. Like I said, we don't have to make a decision tonight, as Kevin made real clear. But it's a good. The idea is answering questions and getting a feel for where each other stands. So we know more how Nakul stands and how I stand, and let's see if we can answer any more questions and see if any of the other three of us are leaning in one direction or another yet.
I also just want to clarify. I think even sending out a survey is a big deal, but I think it's also incredibly difficult to actually get, you know, a representative sample. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. And I think part of the reason is there's a lot of there are a lot of people within Rancho Rinconada that go and use the pool. And my family uses it a lot also just because we happen to be very close to it. But I can imagine that it'd be much harder for someone to even know that it exists as part of the special district if they're maybe further away but still within the district lines. so I think, you know, we can definitely improve that process and try to perfect it as much as possible.
Yeah, the outreach to, there's been a lot of turnover, let's say in 50 years of the ownership of all the houses, and people come into this neighborhood not knowing we exist for the most part, and that we're part of their property taxes. Because it's honestly been over 20 years since the little line item Rancho Rinconada appeared on my property taxes. Because they have so many other things that have that are bigger that are taken out. It's a very small part. So people are always getting surprised going, oh, what's this? I didn't know there was a pool here unless I turned in here because I had to answer my phone or something like that, you know. So anyway, more questions? Another thing is, it's now 7:46, so we've been meeting for an hour and a quarter. If people are burning out, we don't have to keep beating this to death. It is, I wanted to make it the last item on the agenda so we would have time to answer each other's questions and to and it's a huge subject, you know. The whole LAFCO thing and how we're where we're at today is a really long story, not worth telling in most cases. But anyway, does anybody else have any more questions about advantages or disadvantages of going being made part of city of Cupertino? One of the things I learned recently is that, and it shouldn't probably bear on our decision, is that the pools at Blackberry Farm are actually run by the City Works Department. And I was surprised. Right now, the city of Cupertino has no temporary, and so the Public Works Department staffs it with lifeguards who the rest of the year, when it's not weather, and so I was surprised. I always had assumed that the city Parks and Rec Department actually operated the pools. But I think what happens with the city of Cupertino is the Parks and Rec Department comes up with programs, and then the Works Department maintains the facilities where those programs are held, like the senior center and the pools. It makes sense. But I was surprised to see that. Under a part we haven't brought up is that given the flexibility of being a special district, we have slightly different rules that laws that we operate under versus the city of Cupertino. And so, for instance, one of those two lifeguards who shows up at 6:30 in the morning is also our main maintenance person. And so he lifeguards and he does maintenance, and that's a good thing, I think, because he's around the pool to see what needs, around the pool and the facility to see what needs maintaining. And he keeps an eye open. Whereas in the city, I don't see that being as flexible. And also, we going forward in the future, as COVID-19 gets hopefully controlled, we don't know what our offerings are how they're gonna change. We believe that we'll be able to go back to one of our main jobs, teaching adults and children to swim, once restrictions are eased. Right now, lap swim is about all we can do. And in fairness to the Blackberry Farm thing, I don't think either of those pools is set up for lap swimming. I haven't been there in a couple of years, but as I recall, they're not really lap swimming pools. But the other point that Kevin brought up that I wanted to amplify on is, given the fact that let's say we're back in normal times, whatever that becomes, and we have swim teams, and which we do have the swim team practicing now, and we have lap swim, and we have lessons and stuff. It remains to be seen whether they can find any more slots to utilize the pool, because those of us who use the pool, Nicole, myself, others here, know that during the summer, it's utilized like from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. I'm not sure you can find any more hours for programs when people are awake, you know? So that's a good point. If the city of Cupertino thinks that by adding Rancho Rinconada to their parks will give them increased aquatics, I don't think so. Not much, you know, because we're maximizing the use as it is in the summers in a normal year. So anyway, but I getting back to what you were saying, Nicole, and before, yeah, we need and also our other board member that I'd like to see more outreach to find out what people want. You know, we need a better survey. You know, to find so that we can represent the people we're representing. Anyway, anybody have anything else? I don't want to keep babbling.
If I could just quickly do a correction, the 75% is the area surrounding Rancho San Jose. It's not resident usage. That's a different number. But other than that correction, what I'm hearing is that the board is interested in a public outreach. So I can get started on putting something together. I think it will be kind of challenging these days to get a good response, mostly because it's always challenging, but also COVID on top of that makes it very, very, very difficult. One thing that would have helped in normal times would have been a normal summer when people come to the facility, then we could actually go out and poll people. We could hand out surveys, we could do QR codes for people who actually use the facility regardless of where they're from. But I think that's not really going to be possible right now. And that is also one reason that I think we should potentially try to get that delay in this process. So maybe we could get that summer in to get really good results and find out what people want to do. But yeah, for now, I will work on a outreach.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I think waiting for the summers is pretty critical and can be a huge benefit instead of starting and rushing things earlier. Yeah.
So Misha and Chang, you've been kind of quiet. You guys have any questions? Cut it short if you guys have any initial questions. So again, I know this is a lot of information to process.
So it sounds like right now we're not making a decision. We're talking to the consultants, right? And then the ultimate decision is up to what's a determining factor of what happens. How we vote, and then also the outcome of the consultant.
Yeah, I'd say it's a mixture of those two. Kevin could probably.
So, in the grand scheme of this, LAFCO and the city have the most power. If either of those two decide, hey, you're merging, there's very little a district can do. So, what we can do, though, is do public outreach, and then the residents can put pressure on those bodies. So, for example, if the city council has a bunch of angry parents, not that we would want to create an angry mob, but if parents, you know, if participants, sorry, not parents, if participants said, look, we really don't want this, and they go to city council and they're motivated, that might change city council's mind. You know, hey, maybe this isn't really worth it. Or maybe LAFCO might say, oh, hey, maybe this isn't worth it. But generally, the ones who have all the power here is not us, not the board. It's all the city and all LAFCO. So it's more kind of mild influence.
So the LAFCO interviews that they're performing, that's really just to kind of gauge some information on how we feel.
Yeah, so there's there's actually, that's a different process. So strategic planning consultant, that's the one that's the interviews that we're doing. So the strategic plan is more to put together what our future plans are going forward, right? So the consultant will take input from everyone, and obviously, you know, whether we exist or not is a pretty big important piece in our future plans. Yeah. So that's what they're going to ask us about. They ask staff, they ask the board, and they'll ask members of the public. There will probably be an outreach component to this. But the LAFCO process is completely different from the strategic planning process.
Gotcha. So it sounds like we don't have very much say in this anyways. We can recommend something one way or the other. But ultimately, it's going to be up to LAFCO and the city council about what they want to do.
Right. And there's room to kind of influence through outreach.
Yeah. Okay. So then I think it makes sense with what Nicole was suggesting, right? Like, if our main power and our main ability is to sway, you know, the public opinion of what's going on, and if people don't even know about this issue, then like Nicole said, then the main thing is, hey, priority one is you need to know that this is happening in the community, right? Or even like in some cases that this pool exists in the community, right? I mean, I know I've owned and lived in Rancho for the past 5 years, and you know, I learned about the pool about 2 years or this earlier last year, right? And so I think one, it's and I live relatively close to the pool, and so I think like you're saying, I think what Nicole has suggested is more local outreach, right? And then if that takes polling or I think Kevin, you're kind of right in the sense that polling and talking to people that actually use the pool on a daily basis is very important. But also, I think in the community, right, making sure that, hey, this is happening in the Rancho area. These are affecting Rancho residents, and so making sure that they know that this is happening. And so if our you know, if we're here to kind of voice to represent them, I think they should know about it, right? And so I think yeah, if you could explore some options as to how to get our word out there, whether it's mailers or dropping things off or things like that, I feel like that should be the logical next step for us.
Yeah, as Kevin said, if the majority, enough people don't want the city to close down the district and take over the pool.
Yeah.
Then LAFCO has to listen, and so does the city council. And basically, if option 2 were to go ahead, LAFCO makes a decision, but it's based on public input. And you're right, Kevin. People need to know that this is a possibility, and then what the majority of people want to see happen is probably what will happen. We hope, and that's all I've been asking for. Most of what I've been asking for is to say, hey, I want to know if which way we want to go. So far, what I've heard about the other board members is I infer from that you joined the board because you wanted to see this thing continue to exist. And I appreciate that with my heart. So, but whatever's best for the long range for the I'm trying to think of stakeholders here who are the people closest to the pool, who happen to be Rancho district residents and some San Jose. We need to find out what they want, and because I agree with you, I think once they're aware that it could become just another park with no pool in the long run, whatever city of Cupertino wants to do with it, they'd have free reign to do with it. They might object, and say, no, I like having a pool nearby. It may not give me everything I need, but it gives me enough, especially during summers. Like I say, last year was a really strange time for this to be happening. Completely secluded, but it has been effectively, I don't know, what do you want to call it, 80% closed down other than lap swim for the last March. It's a weird time. It's never happened in the past. Anyway, but we can make our point and find out what, but more importantly, also find out, as importantly, find out what the residents and the district holders want to see done. That's important.
So I think maybe as an action item, Kevin, if we could figure out the best way to at least notify or contact and reach out to the stakeholders of the Rancho pool. Some cost-effective and viable options in the near term, and then maybe the next board meeting we figure out, okay, what are the options? I think what do we as a board recommend, right? I think Steve, definitely has some points, and we kind of know, how we're leading. Me personally, I'm leaning towards staying independent as well. But I think the first thing we need to figure out is, where do we as a board stand, knowing the deeper issues, right? And so us as a body, if we're recommending something, right? If we want something to kind of, if we want it to stay independent, or if we feel that Cupertino should take it over, then we need to know where our position is, and then from there, we kind of express that to the stakeholders in the area. I feel like that's probably the best route, but I think all of that takes figuring out how we should get this message out, whether it's polling for more information to base our decision, or to advocate our decision once we figure that out as a board. So I think in either case, it would make sense to kind of examine how we should conduct outreach to the kind of local residents in the area, if that makes sense.
Well, it does make sense, and I think although they haven't been as vocal, the other two board members, by joining the board, I think have, in some sense, voted that they think it's keeping the district running into the future is a worthwhile endeavor. That's what they don't have to come out and explicitly say that. The fact that you went through the hassle of filing to be on the board, means that you care.
Yeah. So maybe, Kevin, if we can do that, if we can kind of explore options for the next a board meeting. I guess the best method of communication, right? Whether it's polling residents for their input, or just making them aware of our position once we establish that as a board. Maybe kind of set that as the next action item for this.
Okay.
Yes, that's I'll definitely get started on that one. Finding out or starting to put together an outreach plan, whether that be polling or especially finding the best ways of doing it. I would want to know whether there would be support again into looking into a consultant who has worked with LAFCOs before. So that was one of the suggestions here.
On the consultant aspect, I'm not sure what they would do. Would it just be further information? Because we have a lot of information in this packet.
Certainly.
Yeah.
The consultant would also potentially know a little bit more about outreach than we do. So one of the things is that we're pretty good at recreation, but we're not exactly outreach experts.
Yeah. I think if it makes sense, I guess the cost associated with the consultant, I'm not sure that if it made financial sense, I'd be open to it. I just don't know if I guess we need to figure out what we'd be bringing the consultant in for. If it's for outreach, then I think maybe we as a board can come up with some ideas for outreach too at a board meeting, or if it's other, I guess I'd be open to a consultant, but I need to know the exact purpose and kind of the cost.
And frankly, do you need a LAFCO consultant? Wouldn't you need somebody with marketing or PR background to get the outreach going?
It's a little bit of both, because the expert would probably need to be familiar with the local LAFCOs, because there's different ones all across the state, right? So it's helpful to have some kind of background in public outreach, but it's also helpful to know LAFCO, what are the kind of political levers you can use, things like that.
Gotcha. So I'm definitely open to that, but I think figuring out what that consultant would do.
Right. It would just be looking.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm open to it. I think for now, yeah, I think that makes sense to kind of just looking into it to see if there's a good fit and then going from there.
All right, well, I think it's a good point. Unless somebody else has some more questions or wants to your opinion, because we didn't expect to come up with a policy at tonight's meeting. But like I say, I think what I'm hearing from you guys, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that I think one thing we do agree upon is from what we've seen so far, we agree that staying an independent special district is probably what we want to do. And until we don't have to make that decision officially yet. And that's what you need to remember when you're talking to the interview with the consultant, Roush and Associates, is to tell them what you feel, whatever that is.
Yeah.
I think that, like I say, I have too much history to try and come up with a real quick summary, but in the bottom line, I still think the community is best served by having an independent special district. And if I didn't think that was true, I'd be the first person to volunteer to hand it over to the city. If I thought they could do a better job, fine. But I haven't seen any evidence of that. So, and we're doing a great job as a under worst possible circumstances that I can think of. All right. So another thing that you talked about in here is we might get together for another meeting at another time after we all talk to the consultant and get some feedback. Or there's supposed to be a meeting for that. Oh, the workshop. That's it. Item number 4. Thank you. So we'll talk some more, but at least I think I hope we each have all have a good feeling for where. That's all we can hope. Like I say, it's now 8. We've been meeting for an hour and a half. That's fine.
When is the workshop, Steve?
The workshop is with our consultant, Roush and Associates. Who, I think its purpose is to feedback to the board with all the individuals, with the common individual feedbacks, and also the employees, and it's an intermediate step on their way.
Okay, and when is it? Is the public allowed to participate?
At some point, the public is encouraged to participate too. Yes. Kevin,
Okay, and is this sponsored by LAFCO?
we're paying. This is what we're doing to come up with a plan.
Oh, with the rep that I met. Okay, all right.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's not LAFCO. It's
Okay, gotcha. Okay, I remember I met her. Him. I met him. Yeah.
So anyway, so we'll be talking about this some more. Like I said, it's a huge, the whole thing, and the choices we're making are is kind of big to. Yes, this position tonight, I think. Kevin,
So,
you got, or Chang, or anybody. I think we're gonna feel. Yeah.
awesome. So I have to personally drop off. So should I make I'm going to make a motion to adjourn the meeting. If there's nothing else to be added by anybody.
A second.
Second.
If anybody wants to stay around and talk afterwards, I'm not totally burned out. We can talk about
Awesome.
but if it's more than, actually, I guess I can't do that because we're a public entity. I can't do that with more than one person. If anybody wants to contact me or Kevin at any time with more questions, please feel free. By the way, I just only found out a couple of days ago that I had Rancho, Steve at ranchorecreation.org. So I've been trying to catch up on all the emails that I've been getting for a month. So anyway, and hopefully next month I'll figure out why my microphone was breaking up again. So we can have a better meeting, because Kevin's was breaking up a little too. The rest of you coming through loud and clear. Thank you. And by the way, Happy New Year, everybody. You know,
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
hope and maybe even pray that this is better than 2020. It could be worse than 2020 as well in a lot of ways. So, stay healthy, and we'll be in touch at least next month and probably before.
You can get a vaccine now soon.
I hope so. But you know, again, I can't believe we're going to get enough by this weekend. It's already Thursday night. You know? So that seems optimistic. I'm an optimist. That's pretty much. Anybody else got anything to say now that we're officially adjourned as of 8:11? If anybody else wants to keep talking, that's fine.